The Superhuman Mind Unlock. Extraordinary Focus, Resilience, and Mental Power, published by Enlight Audiobook. Extraordinary lives are not created by extraordinary talent. They are built by extraordinary thinking. Train your mind differently, and the impossible gradually becomes inevitable. Introduction. Civilizations have always celebrated remarkable achievements while quietly overlooking the place where every remarkable achievement begins, the human mind. Every invention, every masterpiece, every courageous decision, and every life transformed was first shaped by an invisible process of thought. Before reality changes, perception changes. Before circumstances improve, interpretation evolves. The greatest distance any person will ever travel is not measured in miles, but in the silent journey between the mind they inherited and the mind they intentionally create. That journey is the true frontier of human potential. The remarkable truth is that extraordinary focus, resilience, and mental strength are not reserved for a gifted few. They are cultivated through countless deliberate choices that gradually reshape the architecture of thought. The mind is neither a fixed blueprint nor an unchangeable destiny. It is a living system that expands in response to discipline, curiosity, adversity, and purposeful repetition. Every challenge carries the hidden opportunity to strengthen it. Every setback offers material from which wisdom is built, and every ordinary day presents another chance to refine the person you are becoming. This book is not an invitation to chase perfection or compare yourself with extraordinary individuals. It is an invitation to uncover abilities that have always existed beneath distraction, doubt, fear, and limitation. Within these pages, you will discover that genuine mental power is not loud, dramatic, or mysterious. It is quiet, disciplined, adaptable, and remarkably consistent. The superhuman mind is not about becoming someone beyond human. It is about awakening the highest version of the human mind already within you. The transformation begins not with a single breakthrough, but with a single decision. To think with greater intention, to act with greater purpose, and to believe that your greatest strength has been waiting inside you all along. Chapter 1. The Myth of Mental Limits. The most powerful barriers in human life are rarely built from stone, steel, or circumstance. They are constructed from invisible assumptions that quietly become accepted as truth. A belief repeated often enough gradually transforms into an unquestioned reality, and what begins as uncertainty slowly hardens into identity. The mind has an extraordinary ability to protect itself from discomfort, yet that same protective instinct often convinces us that our present capacity defines our permanent potential. This illusion is one of the greatest obstacles to personal growth. Long before people encounter genuine limitations, they often surrender to imagined ones. They lower expectations, silence ambition, avoid unfamiliar challenges, and mistake temporary difficulty for permanent inability. Over time, these invisible boundaries become so familiar that they no longer feel like prisons, they feel like facts. Yet history repeatedly reminds us that many of humanity's greatest breakthroughs began the moment someone refused to accept what everyone else considered impossible. The remarkable truth is that the mind is not simply a recorder of experience, it is an interpreter of experience. It does not merely observe reality, it continuously shapes it through perception, expectation, and belief. Two people may stand before the same challenge and walk away with entirely different futures, not because the challenge changed, but because the meaning they assigned to it was different. One interprets difficulty as evidence of inadequacy, while the other recognizes it as the natural price of growth. That subtle difference in interpretation becomes the dividing line between limitation and possibility. Psychologists have long observed that expectations influence performance in profound ways. When individuals repeatedly tell themselves that they are not smart enough, not talented enough, or not capable enough, the brain gradually begins filtering reality through those assumptions. Opportunities become invisible, risks appear larger than they truly are, and every setback feels like confirmation of an identity that was never objectively true in the first place. This phenomenon resembles wearing tinted glasses for so long that the color of the lenses becomes indistinguishable from reality itself. The external world has not changed, but perception has. The tragedy is not that people lack potential, it is that they often stop exploring it. Human potential is remarkably elastic, expanding in response to challenge and contracting in response to fear. The greatest danger, therefore, is not failure, but premature certainty, the quiet conviction that there is nothing more to become. One of the clearest demonstrations of this truth emerged from the world of athletics through the story of Roger Bannister. For years, the 4-minute mile was regarded as an impossible barrier. Coaches, experts, and athletes widely believed that the human body was incapable of running a mile in less than 4 minutes. The limitation seemed so convincing that it acquired the authority of scientific fact, even though no law of nature had declared it impossible. Then, on May 6, 1954, Bannister accomplished what countless people believed could not be done. He completed the mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. His achievement was extraordinary, but what happened afterward revealed an even deeper lesson about the human mind. Within months, other runners also broke the same barrier. Eventually, it became a standard that elite runners continued to surpass. The physiology of the human body had not suddenly evolved in a single year. What changed first was belief. Once one individual proved that the perceived limit was not absolute, the collective imagination expanded. A wall that had seemed immovable was exposed as largely psychological. Bannister did not merely run faster than anyone else, he altered what countless others believed was possible for themselves. This pattern extends far beyond sports. Every meaningful achievement begins by challenging an assumption that previously appeared unquestionable. Entrepreneurs launch companies despite predictions of failure. Scientists pursue discoveries that conventional wisdom dismisses. Artists create works that initially seem incomprehensible. Innovators are rarely distinguished by possessing extraordinary certainty. Rather, they possess extraordinary willingness to question inherited beliefs. Their advantage is not supernatural intelligence, but intellectual courage, the readiness to examine limits instead of automatically obeying them. Progress belongs to those who recognize that today's accepted boundaries often become tomorrow's outdated myths. Modern neuroscience offers encouraging support for this perspective. The brain is not a rigid machine programmed once and forever. It is an adaptive organ that continually reorganizes itself in response to repeated experience. Every new skill, every unfamiliar challenge, and every sustained effort strengthens neural pathways that were previously weak. Confidence itself often develops after courageous action rather than before it. Waiting to feel completely prepared usually delays growth because the mind gains evidence of capability only through experience. Each small victory rewrites expectations, and each deliberate effort teaches the brain that uncertainty is survivable. The process resembles forging steel. Intense pressure does not weaken well-crafted metal, it refines it. Likewise, wisely embraced challenges refine the mind into something stronger than comfort alone could ever produce. Many people unknowingly become loyal to an outdated version of themselves. They define their future using memories of past failures, old criticisms, or moments of embarrassment that no longer deserve authority. Yet memory should inform wisdom, not imprison identity. A mistake is an event, not a permanent description of a person. Failure is feedback, not destiny. The mind matures when it learns to separate temporary performance from permanent worth. This distinction creates emotional freedom, allowing people to pursue improvement without fearing that every setback threatens their identity. Those who consistently grow are rarely those who avoid mistakes. They are those who refuse to let mistakes become definitions. Perhaps the most liberating realization is that mental limits often dissolve gradually rather than dramatically. There is rarely a single magical breakthrough. Instead, each courageous decision slightly widens the boundaries of possibility. Every difficult conversation, every new skill practiced beyond initial discomfort, every challenge accepted despite uncertainty quietly expands the horizon of what feels achievable. Confidence accumulates like interest in a well-managed investment, growing through consistent deposits of action rather than isolated moments of inspiration. Over time, the person who once doubted their capacity begins accomplishing goals that previously appeared unreachable, not because they became someone entirely different overnight, but because they repeatedly proved to themselves that yesterday's limits were never as permanent as they seemed. The greatest transformation begins with a simple yet profound question. Which of your limitations are genuine and which have merely been rehearsed for so long that they now resemble truth? The answer to that question has the power to redefine the course of an entire life. Every extraordinary mind is built upon the courage to challenge invisible boundaries before attempting visible victories. For the moment you stop treating your assumptions as facts, you create space for a future far greater than your past has ever suggested. Chapter 2. Rewire your brain for growth. The human mind is never truly standing still. Even in moments of apparent routine, it is quietly reshaping itself according to the thoughts it entertains, the actions it repeats, and the beliefs it chooses to reinforce. Every experience leaves an imprint, every decision strengthens a pathway, and every repeated pattern becomes a silent architect of the person you are becoming. Growth, therefore, is not an occasional breakthrough reserved for moments of inspiration. It is the cumulative result of countless invisible adjustments taking place beneath the surface of everyday life. What appears to be a sudden transformation is almost always the final expression of thousands of unnoticed repetitions. The remarkable truth is that your brain is designed not merely to remember the past, but to prepare for the future. It constantly asks one fundamental question: what should I become more efficient at? The answer depends entirely on what you repeatedly ask it to do. If you repeatedly rehearse fear, it becomes increasingly skilled at anticipating danger. If you repeatedly cultivate curiosity, discipline, and thoughtful action, those qualities gradually become more natural. The brain does not judge whether a habit is helpful or harmful. It simply strengthens whatever is practiced most consistently. In this sense, every day is a quiet vote for the kind of mind you will possess tomorrow. For centuries, people believed that intelligence and mental ability were largely fixed after childhood, as though the brain were a completed structure that could only decline with age. Modern neuroscience has revealed a far more hopeful reality. The brain possesses an extraordinary quality known as neuroplasticity, the lifelong capacity to reorganize, strengthen, and create new neural connections in response to learning and experience. Far from being a rigid machine, it resembles a living forest where every repeated thought and action clears a familiar trail. The more often a path is traveled, the easier it becomes to follow. Neglected pathways gradually fade beneath new growth, while frequently used ones become broad, reliable routes that guide future behavior almost automatically. This explains why habits often feel effortless after sufficient repetition, and why changing long-established patterns initially feels uncomfortable. The discomfort is not evidence that change is impossible. It is evidence that the brain is constructing a new pathway while an older one still competes for attention. This understanding transforms the way we view personal development. Growth is no longer a matter of waiting for confidence or hoping that motivation will appear at the perfect moment. Instead, growth becomes an active process of teaching the brain through deliberate repetition. Every small decision contributes to the architecture of identity. Reading a few pages when distractions call for attention, choosing thoughtful words during conflict, returning to meaningful work after disappointment, or practicing a skill despite imperfect results may appear insignificant in isolation. Yet the brain records these actions as evidence of who you are becoming. Identity is rarely established by grand declarations. It is quietly negotiated through repeated behavior. A person does not become disciplined by believing they are disciplined. They become disciplined by repeatedly acting with discipline until the behavior gradually reshapes their self-perception. The mind eventually aligns with the evidence it consistently receives. The work of psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck offers one of the most influential demonstrations of this principle. Through decades of research, she explored the profound difference between what she described as a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Individuals with a fixed mindset often interpreted challenges as tests of their worth. Success confirmed their intelligence, while failure threatened their identity. Consequently, they avoided situations where mistakes were possible, preferring the comfort of familiar abilities over the uncertainty of learning. In contrast, individuals with a growth mindset viewed ability as something that could be developed through effort, effective strategies, and persistence. Rather than asking, "Am I naturally good at this?" they unconsciously asked, "What can this experience teach me?" One particularly revealing observation emerged from studies involving school children. When faced with difficult problems, some students became discouraged and withdrew, convinced that struggle revealed a lack of intelligence. Others became energized by the challenge, treating difficulty as evidence that genuine learning was taking place. The difference was not rooted in natural talent, but in interpretation. Those who believed the brain could grow approached obstacles with greater resilience, ultimately achieving higher levels of performance over time. Their beliefs shaped their behaviors, and their behaviors reshaped their capabilities. Dweck's research demonstrated that the story people tell themselves about their potential often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This principle extends far beyond classrooms. Consider someone learning a new language. During the first weeks, every conversation feels awkward, vocabulary disappears at the worst moments, and progress appears painfully slow. It is tempting to conclude that fluency belongs only to those with exceptional talent. Yet each imperfect attempt strengthens neural connections associated with listening, speaking, and memory. Gradually, sentences that once required conscious effort begin to emerge naturally. The transformation seems almost magical from the outside, but it is the predictable consequence of consistent repetition. The same process governs every meaningful skill, whether developing leadership, emotional intelligence, creativity, or resilience. Mastery is less a gift than a neurological consequence of sustained practice. One of the greatest misconceptions about growth is the belief that dramatic effort produces dramatic change. In reality, the brain responds more favorably to consistency than intensity. A single day of extraordinary discipline cannot outweigh months of neglect, just as one rainfall cannot sustain an entire forest. Small actions performed repeatedly possess a quiet authority that occasional bursts of enthusiasm can never match. This is why lasting transformation often appears unimpressive while it is happening. The daily decision to read instead of scrolling endlessly, to reflect instead of react impulsively, to continue despite slow progress, rarely attracts admiration in the moment. Yet these seemingly modest choices accumulate until they fundamentally alter the structure of the mind. Like drops of water gradually shaping solid stone, consistency succeeds not through force, but through persistence. Equally important is the language people use when speaking to themselves. Internal dialogue functions as ongoing instruction for the brain. Statements such as, "I will never understand this," "I am simply not creative," or "I always fail under pressure," are more than passing thoughts. They become repeated messages that influence attention, emotion, and behavior. Conversely, replacing certainty with possibility changes the brain's orientation toward learning. The phrase, "I cannot do this yet," carries a profoundly different psychological implication than "I cannot do this." One closes the door before effort begins, while the other leaves room for development. The addition of a single word can transform limitation into potential because it shifts the mind from finality toward progress. Growth also requires patience with the invisible stages of improvement. Society often celebrates outcomes while overlooking the long seasons during which progress remains hidden. A seed spends considerable time developing beneath the soil before breaking through the surface. During that unseen period, important work is taking place despite the absence of visible results. Human development follows a similar pattern. There are seasons when effort seems disconnected from reward, when discipline appears unnoticed, and when improvement feels frustratingly slow. Yet beneath the surface, neural pathways are strengthening, emotional endurance is expanding, and identity is quietly evolving. The absence of immediate evidence does not indicate the absence of meaningful progress. Perhaps the most empowering realization is that every thought, every habit, and every deliberate action is participating in the lifelong construction of your mind. You are not confined by yesterday's patterns unless you continue rehearsing them today. Each moment presents an opportunity to strengthen a different pathway, reinforce a healthier belief, and move one step closer to the person you aspire to become. Your brain is not waiting for extraordinary circumstances before it begins changing. It is responding to the ordinary choices you make right now. Every intentional repetition becomes another stroke in the masterpiece of your identity. The question is no longer whether your mind can change, it is already changing. The only question that remains is whether you will direct that change with purpose, patience, and unwavering commitment until the extraordinary becomes your new ordinary. Chapter 3. Master your attention in a distracted world. Every remarkable achievement is purchased with a currency that cannot be earned twice: attention. Time may be the measure of life, but attention determines the value extracted from every passing hour. Two people can be given the same 24 hours, possess similar abilities, and hold comparable opportunities, yet arrive at entirely different destinations because one has learned to direct attention with intention, while the other has allowed it to be scattered by every passing distraction. The modern world has not created a shortage of intelligence, creativity, or ambition. It has created a surplus of interruptions. The quiet tragedy is that many individuals no longer lose their potential through lack of effort, but through the gradual fragmentation of their focus. Every notification, unnecessary conversation, impulsive scroll, and moment of divided concentration seems insignificant on its own, yet together they quietly erode the very mental capacity required for extraordinary thinking. The mind performs at its highest level not when it is constantly occupied, but when it is fully engaged with what truly matters. In an age where countless voices compete for your awareness, learning to govern your attention has become one of the greatest forms of personal freedom. Attention is far more than the ability to concentrate. It is the mechanism through which the brain decides what deserves to become part of your reality. The human mind processes an astonishing amount of information every second, yet only a small fraction reaches conscious awareness. Attention acts as an invisible gatekeeper, selecting which experiences will shape memory, influence emotion, and guide future decisions. Whatever consistently receives your focus gradually acquires greater psychological significance. This is why persistent worry amplifies anxiety, repeated gratitude strengthens optimism, and sustained practice transforms unfamiliar skills into natural abilities. The brain adapts itself to what it repeatedly attends to. In many ways, attention is the sculptor of identity, quietly carving thought patterns that eventually become character. Modern technology has fundamentally altered the environment in which this sculpting takes place. Digital platforms are designed not merely to inform, but to compete relentlessly for human attention. Every vibration, recommendation, autoplay feature, and endless stream of content is carefully engineered to keep the mind moving from one stimulus to another. While these tools offer extraordinary convenience and connection, they also encourage a habit of constant mental switching. The brain becomes accustomed to novelty instead of depth, reaction instead of reflection, stimulation instead of sustained thinking. Over time, this pattern subtly weakens the ability to remain fully present with demanding work, meaningful conversations, or deep contemplation. Concentration begins to feel uncomfortable, not because the mind has become incapable of focus, but because it has become conditioned to expect interruption. Neuroscience provides a compelling explanation for this phenomenon. Each new piece of information triggers the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with anticipation and reward. Contrary to popular belief, dopamine is less about pleasure itself and more about the expectation of discovering something rewarding. This is why checking a phone often feels irresistible, even when there is no important message waiting. The possibility of novelty becomes psychologically compelling. The brain begins craving the next update, the next headline, the next video, or the next notification. Over time, this repeated cycle trains attention to seek frequent stimulation rather than sustained engagement. The consequence is subtle but significant. Activities requiring patience, reading deeply, solving complex problems, writing thoughtfully, or learning difficult skills begin to feel mentally exhausting, not because they are beyond our capability, but because they offer slower rewards than the instant gratification to which the brain has become accustomed. This challenge is precisely why focused attention has become such a rare and valuable advantage. Individuals who can protect their concentration possess an increasingly uncommon ability to think independently, solve meaningful problems, and produce work of exceptional quality. Productivity is often misunderstood as the capacity to accomplish many tasks quickly. Genuine productivity, however, is measured by the significance of what is accomplished rather than the quantity of activity performed. Motion should never be confused with progress. A calendar filled with constant busyness may conceal a mind deprived of meaningful accomplishment. Deep achievement requires uninterrupted thought, and uninterrupted thought requires deliberate protection of attention. Few contemporary thinkers have articulated this principle more effectively than Cal Newport through his philosophy of deep work. Newport argues that the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks is becoming both increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. While many professionals spend their days reacting to emails, messages, meetings, and endless digital interruptions, those who consistently create exceptional value intentionally cultivate periods of uninterrupted concentration. Consider the routines of highly accomplished researchers, authors, software engineers, and innovators whose work demands original thinking rather than constant reaction. They frequently establish clear boundaries around their attention, setting aside dedicated blocks of time during which distractions are removed entirely. Phones are silenced, notifications are disabled, unnecessary browser tabs are closed, and the mind is given permission to remain fully immersed in one meaningful objective. Newport himself became known for producing influential academic work and best-selling books, while maintaining rigorous periods of focused effort, demonstrating that extraordinary output is often the consequence of extraordinary concentration rather than extraordinary talent. His philosophy reminds us that attention is not simply something we possess, it is something we must actively defend. The experience of deep focus often leads to what psychologists describe as a flow state, a condition in which awareness becomes fully absorbed in the task at hand. During these moments, self-consciousness fades, time appears to pass differently, and performance reaches remarkable levels of efficiency and creativity. Athletes frequently describe feeling completely connected to their movements. Musicians become absorbed in the rhythm rather than consciously thinking about each note. Writers lose awareness of the passing hours while ideas unfold naturally across the page. Entrepreneurs discover innovative solutions after sustained immersion in complex problems. Flow is not accidental. It emerges when attention remains undivided long enough for the brain to move beyond surface-level thinking into deeper cognitive processing. The doorway to this state is not opened by greater intelligence, but by greater presence. Protecting attention also requires recognizing that every yes carries the hidden cost of many unseen no's. Agreeing to unnecessary obligations, consuming endless streams of trivial information, or allowing constant interruptions gradually reduces the mental energy available for what truly matters. Cognitive energy is a finite resource. Every decision, every distraction, and every unresolved thought draws from the same reservoir of mental capacity. This is why seemingly minor interruptions often leave people feeling mentally exhausted, despite accomplishing very little. The fatigue does not arise solely from working hard. It often arises from repeatedly shifting attention between competing demands. Every transition forces the brain to disengage from one context before reconstructing another, creating invisible costs that accumulate throughout the day. Attention flourishes where intention exists. Establishing purposeful routines, defining clear priorities, and creating environments that support concentration are not acts of restriction, but expressions of freedom. A workspace free from unnecessary distractions, scheduled periods for uninterrupted thinking, intentional breaks that restore rather than fragment the mind, and conscious limits on digital consumption all strengthen the ability to direct attention instead of surrendering it. These practices are not about rejecting technology or escaping the modern world. They are about ensuring that tools remain servants rather than masters. Perhaps the deepest lesson is that whatever consistently receives your attention ultimately shapes the person you become. A mind repeatedly occupied by comparison gradually loses gratitude. A mind consumed by fear gradually loses courage. A mind devoted to meaningful learning gradually expands beyond its former limits. Attention is more than a mental skill. It is an expression of values. Where you repeatedly direct your awareness reveals what you are allowing to influence your character, your decisions, and your future. Every day presents countless invitations to surrender your focus to whatever shouts the loudest. Yet greatness has always belonged to those who quietly choose what deserves their concentration. The future is rarely determined by dramatic moments of inspiration. More often, it is shaped by ordinary hours during which attention is either invested wisely or spent carelessly. Every masterpiece, every innovation, every meaningful relationship, and every lasting contribution has first required someone willing to remain present long after distraction offered an easier alternative. Mastering your attention is therefore far more than a strategy for increasing productivity. It is a commitment to living deliberately in a world determined to divide your mind. When you reclaim authority over your attention, you reclaim authority over your thoughts, your actions, and ultimately the direction of your life, because the quality of your future will always reflect the quality of what you consistently choose to notice today. Chapter 4. Emotional Control, Your Hidden Superpower. Strength is often mistaken for intensity, yet the strongest minds are rarely the loudest. They are the ones that remain composed when circumstances become uncertain, thoughtful when emotions surge, and purposeful when others are driven by impulse. Emotional control is not the absence of feelings. It is the ability to experience every emotion without allowing it to dictate your decisions. Anger, fear, disappointment, and frustration are natural parts of being human, but they become destructive only when they take control of the mind. The greatest competitors, leaders, and innovators understand that while they cannot always influence what happens around them, they can always influence how they respond. That ability quietly separates ordinary performance from extraordinary character. Emotions are valuable signals, not reliable commanders. They provide information about our experiences, yet they do not always present an accurate picture of reality. A difficult conversation may trigger defensiveness, a temporary setback may create self-doubt, and an unexpected failure may invite discouragement. But none of these emotions defines the truth of the situation. The mind grows stronger when it learns to pause before reacting, creating space between stimulus and response. Within that brief pause lies the freedom to choose wisdom over impulse, patience over frustration, and clarity over confusion. Emotional maturity is not measured by how little you feel, but by how wisely you act despite what you feel. Psychological research consistently shows that individuals with high emotional intelligence often outperform those with superior technical ability because they communicate more effectively, recover from setbacks more quickly, and build stronger relationships. They understand that lasting success depends as much on managing internal reactions as mastering external skills. Confidence, therefore, is not the absence of anxiety, but the decision to move forward without surrendering to it. Resilience is not avoiding disappointment, but refusing to let disappointment become a permanent identity. Developing emotional control requires intentional practice. It begins by observing thoughts instead of immediately believing them, questioning emotional assumptions before acting on them, and recognizing that every difficult moment is an opportunity to strengthen inner stability. Like a muscle that becomes stronger through resistance, emotional resilience develops each time you choose thoughtful action over automatic reaction. With repetition, calmness becomes less of a temporary state and more of a personal habit. Ultimately, your greatest advantage will never be the ability to control every circumstance. It will be the ability to remain grounded regardless of the circumstance. A composed mind sees opportunities where panic sees obstacles, finds solutions where frustration finds excuses, and continues moving forward when others lose direction. Emotional control is not merely a useful skill, it is a hidden superpower that transforms pressure into perspective, setbacks into wisdom, and ordinary individuals into exceptional ones. Chapter 5. The Discipline That Outlasts Motivation. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the steady flame that continues burning long after excitement has faded. Many people wait for the perfect mood before taking meaningful action, believing that inspiration must come first. In reality, lasting progress rarely begins with emotion. It begins with commitment. Feelings are temporary and unpredictable, rising and falling with circumstances, while discipline is a conscious decision repeated until it becomes part of one's character. The most accomplished individuals are not those who always feel inspired, but those who continue moving forward even when enthusiasm is absent. They understand that success is not built on extraordinary moments of motivation, but on ordinary moments of consistency. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to live a life of constant sacrifice. It is about making small decisions today that protect the future you hope to create. Every meaningful achievement is the result of countless choices that seemed insignificant at the time. Reading a few more pages instead of giving in to distraction, finishing an important task before seeking entertainment, or honoring a promise to yourself even when no one else is watching. These quiet victories may never attract applause, yet they gradually shape identity. Every disciplined action sends a powerful message to the mind. I can trust myself to do what matters, regardless of how I feel. One of the greatest obstacles to discipline is the desire for immediate gratification. The human brain naturally seeks comfort, convenience, and quick rewards, often overlooking the greater benefits that patience can bring. Yet nearly everything of lasting value, knowledge, financial security, meaningful relationships, physical fitness, or emotional resilience requires consistent effort over time. Those who learn to delay short-term pleasure for long-term fulfillment develop an advantage that compounds throughout their lives. Like interest accumulating in a well-managed investment, disciplined actions may appear modest today, but their impact becomes extraordinary when repeated over months and years. Rather than relying on willpower alone, disciplined people build systems that make success easier. They create routines that reduce unnecessary decisions, organize their environments to support productive behavior, and focus on showing up consistently instead of pursuing perfection. They understand that missing one day is a temporary interruption, while abandoning the habit entirely is the real setback. Progress belongs to those who return again and again, despite occasional failure. In the end, discipline is an act of self-respect. It is the quiet promise that your future deserves more than your present comfort. Motivation may inspire the first step, but discipline carries you through every step that follows. Long before success becomes visible to the world, discipline is already working silently beneath the surface, building the habits, character, and resilience that make extraordinary achievements possible. Chapter 6. Think like the world's top performers. Exceptional performance rarely begins with exceptional talent. It begins with exceptional thinking. Before remarkable results become visible in the outside world, they are quietly formed in the invisible world of decisions, perspectives, and habits of mind. The people who consistently perform at the highest level are not simply working harder than everyone else. They are thinking differently. They approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear, uncertainty with preparation instead of hesitation, and success with humility instead of complacency. Their greatest advantage is not found in their abilities alone, but in the quality of the mindset guiding those abilities. Every action is preceded by a thought, and every lasting achievement is ultimately the reflection of a disciplined way of thinking. One defining characteristic of top performers is their ability to focus on what they can control while refusing to become consumed by what they cannot. Many people waste enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about opinions, circumstances, and outcomes that lie beyond their influence. High performers recognize that such thinking weakens both confidence and productivity. Instead, they direct their attention toward preparation, learning, and execution. They understand that while results matter, results are produced by consistent behaviors rather than constant anxiety. By concentrating on daily actions instead of distant outcomes, they create a sense of stability even in uncertain situations. Another distinguishing quality is intellectual curiosity. Truly exceptional individuals never believe they have reached the limits of their knowledge. Success does not convince them that they have nothing left to learn. It reminds them how much more remains to be discovered. They ask thoughtful questions, seek constructive feedback, and willingly challenge their own assumptions. This openness protects them from one of the greatest enemies of growth, certainty. A closed mind defends existing beliefs, while an open mind continually refines them. The willingness to learn from every experience, including failure, allows high performers to improve long after others have stopped growing. Their approach to decision-making is equally deliberate. Rather than reacting impulsively to every opportunity or obstacle, they pause, evaluate, and think beyond immediate emotions. They recognize that every decision carries consequences extending far into the future. Small choices repeated consistently often determine the direction of an entire life. A single conversation handled with patience can strengthen a relationship. One disciplined hour of focused work can move an important project forward. Choosing to read instead of endlessly consuming distractions gradually transforms knowledge and perspective. Top performers understand that greatness is rarely built through dramatic gestures. It is assembled through thousands of thoughtful decisions that align with a larger purpose. Long-term thinking also shapes the way exceptional individuals measure progress. They are not discouraged by temporary setbacks because they evaluate success across years rather than days. They understand that meaningful goals require patience and that visible achievements are usually preceded by long periods of invisible effort. While others become frustrated by slow progress, they remain committed to the process, trusting that consistent improvement eventually produces extraordinary outcomes. This perspective protects them from the emotional highs and lows that often derail sustained performance. They recognize that mastery is not a destination reached quickly, but a lifelong pursuit refined through continuous practice. Perhaps the most powerful mindset shared by the world's top performers is a deep sense of ownership. They accept responsibility for their growth, their decisions, and their responses to adversity. Rather than blaming circumstances, luck, or other people, they ask a more empowering question: what can I do next to improve this situation? This shift from blame to responsibility transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning. Ownership does not mean controlling everything that happens in life. It means refusing to surrender control over how you choose to respond. The quality of your life will always reflect the quality of your thinking. Every meaningful achievement begins as an idea carefully nurtured through disciplined action, thoughtful decisions, and continuous learning. You do not need extraordinary circumstances to develop an extraordinary mind. You need the willingness to think with greater intention than yesterday, to learn with greater humility than before, and to act with greater consistency than your emotions may suggest. When your thinking evolves, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, your habits strengthen. And when your habits strengthen, the extraordinary life you once admired in others gradually becomes the life you begin creating for yourself. Chapter 7. Stress, Failure, and Pressure. As fuel, comfort has an undeniable appeal, yet it has never been the birthplace of extraordinary character. The qualities that define remarkable individuals, resilience, wisdom, courage, patience, and perseverance, are rarely developed when life proceeds exactly as planned. They emerge through moments that test conviction, challenge identity, and demand growth beyond familiar limits. While many people view stress, failure, and pressure as unwelcome interruptions to success, those with exceptional minds recognize them as essential components of it. The greatest obstacle is not adversity itself, but the belief that adversity should never exist. When challenges are treated as enemies, they drain confidence. When they are accepted as teachers, they become powerful instruments of transformation. Stress is often misunderstood as something that must be eliminated from life. In reality, not all stress is harmful. A meaningful goal, a demanding responsibility, or an unfamiliar opportunity naturally creates tension because growth requires adaptation. Just as muscles strengthen only when they encounter resistance, the mind develops resilience only when it is required to solve problems, manage uncertainty, and recover from setbacks. A life completely free of pressure might feel comfortable for a season, but it would eventually weaken the very capacities needed to face inevitable difficulties. The objective, therefore, is not to avoid pressure, but to become capable of performing wisely within it. Failure carries a similar misconception. Society frequently treats failure as the opposite of success, yet in practice it is often one of success's most faithful companions. Every significant accomplishment is built upon countless attempts that did not unfold as expected. Inventors refine ideas through experiments that fall short. Entrepreneurs adjust strategies after unsuccessful ventures. Athletes analyze disappointing performances to sharpen future results. Writers revise imperfect drafts before producing work that resonates with millions. The common thread is not the absence of failure, but the refusal to allow failure to define identity. A setback is an event, not a permanent description of who you are. The moment failure becomes a lesson instead of a label, it loses its power to limit your future. Pressure has a remarkable way of revealing character. During calm seasons, confidence can appear effortless because little is being tested. It is only when expectations rise, uncertainty increases, or circumstances become difficult that true mental strength is exposed. Under pressure, habits become visible, preparation becomes valuable, and emotional discipline becomes indispensable. Those who have invested in developing their minds before the storm arrives are far more likely to remain clear, composed, and purposeful when challenges intensify. Pressure does not create character as much as it uncovers the character that has already been quietly built through daily discipline. One of the most empowering shifts in perspective is recognizing that adversity often expands capacities that comfort never could. Difficult experiences strengthen patience, deepen empathy, sharpen judgment, and cultivate gratitude in ways that effortless success rarely achieves. Looking back across a lifetime, many people discover that the moments they once wished had never happened ultimately became the experiences that shaped their greatest wisdom. This does not mean pain should be celebrated or hardship unnecessarily sought, but it does mean that even life's most difficult seasons can contain the seeds of remarkable growth when approached with courage and reflection. Resilience is not an inborn trait reserved for a fortunate few. It is developed through repeated encounters with difficulty, followed by the decision to continue moving forward. Every obstacle overcome increases confidence for the next challenge. Every recovery from disappointment strengthens emotional endurance. Every problem solved reinforces the belief that future problems can also be faced with determination. Like a tree whose roots grow deeper through enduring powerful winds, the human mind becomes more stable when it learns to withstand life's inevitable storms rather than expecting permanent calm. There will always be circumstances beyond your control, unexpected setbacks, and moments when progress feels painfully slow. Yet these experiences need not become barriers to your future. They can become the very conditions that prepare you for it. The strongest minds are not those that have avoided hardship, but those that have learned to transform hardship into wisdom, pressure into purpose, and failure into fuel for continued growth. When you stop asking why difficulties happen to you and begin asking what they are preparing you for, every challenge becomes an opportunity to build a stronger, calmer, and more resilient version of yourself. In the end, it is not the absence of adversity that defines an extraordinary life, but the extraordinary way in which an ordinary person chooses to rise through it. Chapter 8. Daily Habits that Build an Extraordinary Mind. Extraordinary minds are not created in extraordinary moments. They are quietly assembled through ordinary days that are lived with uncommon intention. Behind every individual admired for remarkable focus, resilience, wisdom, or achievement lies a collection of daily habits so consistent that they eventually become invisible. While the world often celebrates dramatic breakthroughs, the deeper truth is that lasting transformation rarely arrives with sudden force. it grows patiently, almost unnoticed, through the repeated decisions that shape character one day at a time. Every sunrise offers a fresh opportunity to strengthen the mind, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet discipline of choosing what serves long-term growth over short-term comfort. A powerful mind is built by protecting the quality of what enters it. Just as the body reflects the nourishment it receives, the mind reflects the information it consumes. Every book read, every conversation held, every idea explored, and every environment entered contributes to the architecture of thought. Individuals who continuously expose themselves to meaningful knowledge gradually develop broader perspectives, clearer judgment, and greater emotional maturity. Lifelong learning is not simply an academic pursuit. It is an ongoing investment in the person you are becoming. Curiosity keeps the mind alive, while complacency quietly limits its potential. The willingness to remain a student, regardless of success or experience, is one of the defining habits of exceptional people. Reflection is equally essential. A busy mind is not always a thoughtful mind. In the constant movement of modern life, many people accumulate experiences without extracting wisdom from them. Taking a few quiet moments to evaluate the day, acknowledge lessons learned, and consider areas for improvement transforms ordinary experiences into lasting insight. Reflection creates self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of intentional growth. It allows mistakes to become teachers rather than repeated patterns, and successes to become sources of understanding rather than reasons for complacency. No discussion of mental excellence is complete without recognizing the inseparable connection between the mind and the body. Clear thinking depends upon physical well-being more than many people realize. Regular movement improves concentration, reduces stress, and supports emotional stability. Restful sleep restores cognitive performance, strengthens memory, and enhances decision-making. Nutritious food fuels the brain with the energy required for sustained focus, while moments of stillness and mindful breathing calm mental noise and restore perspective. Caring for the body is not a distraction from developing the mind. It is one of the most practical ways to support it. Equally important is the habit of focused work. In a culture filled with endless distractions, the ability to dedicate uninterrupted attention to meaningful tasks has become increasingly rare. Setting aside intentional periods for deep concentration allows ideas to mature, creativity to flourish, and complex problems to be solved with greater clarity. Progress is seldom the result of frantic activity. More often, it is the outcome of consistent attention applied to what truly matters. A single hour of purposeful focus each day can produce results that countless hours of scattered effort never achieve. Gratitude and optimism also deserve a place among the habits of an extraordinary mind. Gratitude does not ignore life's difficulties. It simply refuses to allow them to become the only reality that the mind notices. By appreciating progress instead of obsessing over perfection, individuals cultivate resilience that remains steady even during challenging seasons. Optimism, likewise, is not blind positivity, but the disciplined belief that effort, learning, and perseverance can influence the future. Together, these habits strengthen emotional balance and encourage forward movement, even when immediate results are not visible. Perhaps the most transformative habit of all is consistency. There will always be days when motivation fades, circumstances become difficult, or progress appears disappointingly slow. Yet the extraordinary mind continues its work, trusting that meaningful change is rarely visible in the beginning. Like a river gradually shaping solid rock, small actions repeated faithfully possess a quiet power that far exceeds dramatic but temporary effort. Every page you read, every thoughtful decision you make, every distraction you resist, every challenge you face with composure, and every promise you keep to yourself becomes another brick in the foundation of the person you are becoming. By now, one truth should stand above all others. The superhuman mind is not a miracle bestowed upon a fortunate few. It is the natural outcome of thousands of deliberate choices made with patience, purpose, and perseverance. Your future will not be defined by isolated moments of brilliance, but by the habits you practice when no one is watching. Every ordinary day carries the possibility of becoming extraordinary when lived with intention. The life you aspire to create begins not with a distant breakthrough, but with the next thoughtful choice you make. Because greatness is never built all at once, it is quietly constructed, one disciplined day at a time. Conclusion. The greatest transformation rarely announces its arrival. It does not begin with a dramatic revelation, an extraordinary opportunity, or a single perfect decision. More often, it begins quietly, in the invisible moments when you choose discipline over distraction, curiosity over certainty, courage over comfort, and purpose over convenience. Those moments may appear ordinary to the outside world, yet they possess the remarkable power to redefine an entire life. Every enduring achievement, every resilient character, and every exceptional mind has been shaped by thousands of choices that seemed too small to matter until time revealed their true significance. The extraordinary has always been hidden within the ordinary, waiting for consistency to uncover it. Throughout this journey, one truth has remained constant. The human mind is far more adaptable, resilient, and powerful than most people ever realize. It is not a fixed possession assigned at birth, but a living system that responds to what it repeatedly experiences, believes, and practices. Every thought you intentionally cultivate, every meaningful challenge you accept, every emotion you learn to guide rather than obey, and every habit you faithfully repeat becomes part of the architecture of the person you are becoming. Your future is not written by talent alone, nor determined by circumstances beyond your control. It is quietly shaped by the quality of your thinking and the consistency of your actions. There will be days when progress feels invisible. There will be moments when doubt speaks louder than confidence, when setbacks appear greater than opportunities, and when the easier path seems far more inviting than the meaningful one. Those moments are not signs that your journey has failed. They are invitations to strengthen the very qualities that define an extraordinary mind. Growth has never followed a perfectly straight path. It advances through patience, reflection, adaptation, and the willingness to continue when immediate rewards are absent. Trust the process even when the results have not yet caught up with your effort, because the deepest transformations always take place beneath the surface before they become visible to the world. Remember that becoming superhuman does not mean becoming flawless. It does not require limitless energy, constant confidence, or the absence of fear. It means becoming more intentional than yesterday, more resilient than your last setback, and more committed to your values than your temporary emotions. A superhuman mind is simply a fully awakened human mind, one that refuses to be imprisoned by limiting beliefs, distracted by meaningless noise, or defeated by temporary failure. It is a mind that chooses learning over ego, responsibility over excuses, and steady progress over the illusion of instant success. As you close this book, understand that no sentence within these pages possesses the power to change your life on its own. Knowledge becomes valuable only when it is translated into action, and inspiration becomes meaningful only when it is supported by consistent practice. The real story begins after the final page, in the conversations you approach with greater patience, the decisions you make with greater clarity, the challenges you face with greater courage, and the habits you strengthen day after day. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to become the author of a stronger mindset and a wiser future. One day, you may look back and realize that the life you once admired from a distance became your own, not because everything suddenly changed, but because you did. Your focus became sharper, your resilience became deeper, your thoughts became more intentional, your actions became more consistent. Quietly, almost unnoticed, the extraordinary mind you hoped to build became the mind through which you began living every day. The greatest power you will ever possess has never existed outside you. It has always been waiting within your thoughts, your choices, and your willingness to grow. Protect it, strengthen it, trust it, and never forget that the most remarkable version of your future will always be created by the mind you choose to build today.